Welcome. In this video we're going to be taking a look at Karu, a legendary grade support class Elune. Looking over her base stats, you'll notice that she has quite high base HP, some attack, and a decent amount of physical and magic defense, as well as her speed being on the not too slow side. It is quite high, but not the highest. She is support, so that does help her if you want to use her turn 1 to buff. As you upgrade her up through Transcendence, you'll notice that her HP does go up to a quite nice 58.2k, her attack being at 9.2k, and her physical and magic defense being at a nice 5.2k each. This is good. It makes her very tanky, which is good because she will need that as a support. She could be targeted a lot. Moving over to her skills, her first skill, Drum Master. This is an AoE skill. This does damage to all enemies every time she attacks with it. It is a complete AoE, that's why the damage is so low. It is still 48% of her attack plus 60 damage, magic damage to all enemies. As this skill does get leveled up, the damage does increase some, but it is not too significant as it is an AoE. This skill is good, but it also does have drawbacks. Because it is an AoE, attacking enemies, such as in PvP situations, if they have a Freya or if they have a Wei buff from her special skill that heals whenever an enemy is attacked, using her normal skill to attack an enemy and it not be doing too much damage just means that they heal themselves a lot instead of you doing any damage, so really you're losing out instead of helping your side. You won't be doing the damage, instead you'll be healing the enemy by attacking with her. So it is something to keep in mind and something that you want to pay attention to when you're building your team and watching for turn orders. Moving to her special skill, this one is a buff that increases for all of your allies. This buff increases at level 1 the crit rate of all allies by 20% for 2 turns. Not a bad crit buff, as all crit buffs are good. It also puts a buff on them that allows them to heal by 20% of her attack each time that they attack if they have this buff. So if they cycle out of it before she is able to apply it again, they won't get that heal, but she can reapply it again. As it is a special skill, she can use it quite often. As this skill gets leveled up, the crit rate buff does increase up to 40%, which is very significant, and it goes up to 3 turns. The heal that it does is also up to 30% of her attack. This makes this buff very good, especially for any team that you want to do high damage with, and it has not so high crit rate, allowing your team to crit more often, but also heal themselves in the process. So you don't necessarily need to have too many healers on your team if you're using Karu with this buff. Her ultimate skill, Onward, is a very nice skill because it allows her to team up with the rest of your team to use their basic skill. Their attack is increased by 25% of her attack, and they have a 20% chance at level 1 to gain an enhanced buff that also increases their attack by 25% of her attack for an additional 1 turn, meaning that on their turn they also have an additional attack buff. But this allows everybody to attack with their turn 1. This can be especially useful in certain team comps, which I'll go over in a moment. As the skill gets leveled up to level 6, the attack buff goes up to a 40% of her attack. The increase that they get have a 30% chance, a higher chance of obtaining that buff. That buff goes up to also 40% of her attack and goes up to a 2-turn cooldown, meaning that there is a chance for every ally to get an extra attack buff from her based on 40% of her attack. This is a 2-turn buff, which is nice. This skill also is a good way to kill a single target very quickly, as it will have everybody be able to target that one enemy. This can be used on any enemy, so that even something where you have perhaps a DPS that cannot target back lines, Karu can use her ultimate skill on that backline target and everybody will hit it, even if they cannot directly target it themselves. Moving to her passive 1, this passive is a very good support passive, as it removes a single random debuff off of an ally when she gets a turn. So every time she gets a turn, if you have an ally that has a debuff, it will remove a random debuff from the ally, which is nice, as it can keep them cleansed. If they have perhaps maybe a paralyze effect on them, then that paralyze effect can be removed when she gets a turn. The same thing with a stun. Her second passive is an evasion passive for your team. As your team's HP decreases, their chance of evading damage increases. This can be particularly useful on evasion tanks or on anything that relies on evasion to help them do damage or to help them stay alive. It also helps your entire team, because it does provide them with extra evasion, meaning that they can evade or at least not take full damage from attacks if it's a multi-hit, or evade the attack completely if it's a single target attack and they have decent evasion to begin with. At best though, this is 0.3% evasion for every 1% of HP loss, meaning that if they're roughly at a 99% of their HP is gone, then you're still only looking at about a 30% chance of invasion. So it's not that high even if you're almost dead. So something to keep in mind, as it is somewhat helpful. It sounds better sometimes than what it actually provides. The third passive for her, this one, as long as she's alive, any ally that has her buffs from either the ultimate skill getting the random buff or the special skill with the crit buff, this one, if they land a critical attack, it increases the crit power rate of that ally by 10%. This can go up to 50%. So if they attack multiple times and they get multiple turns and they crit on every one of those turns, or every turn that they get, this increases up. This means that they have a total of 50% or it caps out. But this does allow your DPS Elunes to hit harder on the enemies, as they constantly increasing their crit power rate, which can be very helpful. Now, going back to the ultimate skill, I did want to mention a couple of things and why this can particularly be useful in certain team comps. One of those examples would be if you're using it with Kongrim, which is a very good damage dealer. The reason is that this skill is a team-up attack, and it will allow Kongrim to get an additional attack in. So as long as you're targeting the same enemy Elune that Kongrim has already been attacking, it'll allow him to stack up more stacks onto that target, meaning that he can get that instant kill off on that target faster. One way to be able to use this, or a team comp that you could use this in that would benefit Kongrim on being able to kill something quickly, would be able to have Kongrim move first, have him team up with Lilith, which would team up with him if he's the only male on your team. That would allow him to hit that target again. That would provide 2 hits. Then Karu's ultimate skill, which would team up with him, which to provide a 3rd hit, thus putting the mark of death on the enemy target, allowing Kongrim on his next turn to be able to instantly kill it with his ultimate, as it will not cost any souls. It doesn't matter if you have any after using the ultimate skill of Karu. So your Kongrim does not need to have souls at that point, so you can use them all with Karu, and then Kongrim on his second turn would be able to instantly kill an enemy very quickly. So it is a way to use Karu on a team comp with Kongrim to take down an enemy target, no matter how tanky they are, very quickly. As this does work in PvP, using it in PvE boss battles, it won't work unless you're just trying to stack Kongrim up quickly to use it as a damage skill. It will not one-shot bosses, but it can do the bosses in the adventure stages if you're doing it there. But in most of those cases, you do not need to instantly kill them, as just having high damage is usually enough to do it. Okay, moving on to the skill gems for Karu. Her first one, which is just an AoE attack that does magic damage, and it is very low. This one does do the ones that it does say to do is blue, blue, yellow. Not actually quite sure why the yellow, but it does, if you do it, it does have a 5% chance to reduce the magic defense of the targets by 5% for 2 turns. So doing this one is a chance to reduce damage. This skill, there's various things you can do with it, as the skill does not provide a lot of damage to begin with. A full blue set might be beneficial. I did the yellow just for testing purposes and for fun, and I had it. But an all blue set just for the extra damage might help her be a little bit more helpful in your team comp so that they can do damage. As for the second skill, the special skill, this one is a yellow violent set. And this one, the bonus is a low 5% chance to increase physical defense of the target by 10% for 2 turns. It does have a chance to do it. It also provides her with a speed buff, allowing her to get a turn a little bit quicker. Another alternative would be just to go with another yellow gem so that the buff is even a little bit stronger for the crit rate. So that would probably be a better alternative than to going with yellow violent, and I'll most likely plan on changing my violent one over later to something better. But as it is right now, the violent one that I have is a rainbow, so it's essentially a 4-star. I probably won't change it until I get a 5-star yellow, or a 6-star yellow, sorry, to put there. As for the last one, it's a 10% chance of resetting the cooldown, and this one is a does do damage, so it does add damage when you use it. So the blue and the yellow is also a buff to your allies, which is also good. And then as a violent for speed, they do all provide some utility to the skill, with the violent being the least of them. But having that 10% chance of resetting the cooldown is nice, because it gives you a chance to be able to use it again quickly, so you can do the team up again multiple times. So it's not bad. It is a low chance at only 10%, but it can be helpful if you're using her in long boss fights or something where the chance of you using it more often does come into play. Looking at the dimension slate on her, things that you would probably want to focus on is HP, to have her HP as high as possible, or physical and magic defense as high as possible. She doesn't necessarily need anything else. Accuracy she doesn't need, crit power she doesn't need, attack she doesn't need. The main thing that you would want to get with her is attack speed, physical, magic defense, and HP. Any evasion that you get would also be nice, but that would be more secondary. So the main DPS stats, including accuracy, is not something you're going to need on her, whereas the tanky stats, of course, for a support, physical, magic defense, HP, are something that you would want to focus on a lot on her. As far as gear goes for her, you have a wide range of options. Anything to reduce damage, for example, the Emperor set or the Forgotten Heroes set would be good. The support set later on would be good, as it would provide her with a lot of extra damage and damage mitigation from the gear being, higher base stats. That does help. Anything you can do to provide extra attack, because her buffs can be based on attack, or anything for extra damage mitigation for PDEF and MDEF would help her survive a little bit more. Just some things to look at as far as that goes. There really aren't too many sets that are just really good for her. All sets have benefits and drawbacks for her. DPS sets wouldn't be useful, but most of your other tank or support sets would be good for her, as they do help her provide her with a little bit more damage mitigation and survival. Overall with Karu, she is something that can be helpful to your team, especially if you're doing boss fights where you need to bring 2 supports. You can bring Wei Wei as 1 support, Karu as the 2nd support, and it will allow your team to get additional attack buffs, crit buffs, so on, so you can do more damage quickly. The team up skill allows you to hit faster, so if you're struggling with hitting that 60 turn part in some of the boss battles for the daily quest, then bringing Karu to have everything hit a little bit more often can be helpful, plus provide with those crits to make sure that you're landing the crits. That can also be helpful. I wouldn't bring her as a replacement for Wei Wei, but I would bring her as a support, additional support with Wei Wei to provide you with that crit buff and multi-hit. She is good, and she does have some advantages. For PvP, she can also be useful, again, because of the crit rate increase, but also because of the AoE's attacks, which can be good and bad, but also the team up skill, which allows you to focus down a target. If you have good high DPSs on your team, you can have her use the ultimate skill to focus down a DPS to kill it off very quickly, especially if it's something squishy on the enemy side. And even if they're in the back line, your DPS would be able to target it with her using her ultimate skill on that target. That's going to be it for this one. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Thank you.